This is Richard Schulman from Keller Williams Realty. This is a brief video overviewing the residential purchase agreement and related documents. So this is the basic offer form. So if you're a buyer or a seller, this will help you get a brief understanding of what's going on. For further questions, please contact me or your salesperson. The first page here is the disclosure regarding agency relationships. Here it talks about the buyer's agent responsibilities, and here are the seller's agents. And in the instance of a dual agency, it's discussed here. Keep in mind, a dual agency refers to not only the same person representing you, but also anyone from the same brokerage. So if two KW agents are representing you, which is very likely, then there's actually a dual agency, even though you have different agents. This is the civil code. There's no signature or initial needed on this page. This form identifies that your broker may be representing other clients in the transaction, so you should be aware of that and read this carefully. And again, ask if you have questions regarding this. Here's the table of contents, so if you want to quickly reference, let's say, the allocation of costs or anything about repairs, you can see which page they're on. On the first page of the offer, you can see the name, the address of the property, the purchase price, the days after acceptance for close of escrow. Here is the deposit. This is the good faith deposit, 3% down. This amount here is the amount of the first loan, and if there's a second loan, it would be covered in this section, although it's fairly rare. At the bottom here, this is the balance of the down payment. So if you add the $144,500 and the $25,500, that's the total amount of money the buyer is putting down. When added with the loan amount, you get the purchase price. On the second page here, you have more information about the loan. You have information about the appraisal contingency. It discusses the loan contingency here, which is the time the buyer has to get a loan or appraisal approved. If it's a cash offer, it'll also be identified in this section. This section here, number 5, will identify any other documents or terms that are built into the deal. Definitely always read this part very carefully. Section 7 is the allocation of costs, and what we have here is what we call the traditional allocation of costs. So typically the seller pays for a termite inspection and the environmental hazards report or natural hazard zone disclosure report. It can be called either one. In section B, it talks about government required retrofits, and those vary from city to city. In section C, it identifies that buyer and seller are going to split their own escrow fees, and each party will pay for their own title insurance. Typically the seller pays for the transfer taxes and the HOA transfer fees here if the property is in an HOA. In this situation, the buyer is asking for the seller to pay for the Section 1 termite work as well as the inspection. And in D9, it talks about the home warranty. It's also very important to read Section 8B. This talks about anything that's also brought with the property. Here they're asking for the stove, the washer and dryer, and the refrigerators. And down here it talks about TVs and brackets for TVs that are attached. So make sure when you're reviewing this that it's including or not including the appliances that you wanted to include or not include. On this page here, there's not a lot to fill in. Talks about closing timeline at top. It talks about the time that keys will be delivered. There's a lot of information about disclosures at the bottom of this page. Again, continuing with disclosures in section F at the top. Section 12 begins the inspection process, talks about how the buyer should pursue their inspection. The last big section of the contract is section 14. This goes over top to bottom all the buyer and seller rights for contingencies and cancellations. Here you have information for the brokers and escrow. This section goes over dispute resolution and liquidated damages. That's something you just should discuss with your salesperson. This part here defines a lot of words, including 3 different definitions for the word days. And then here you have the agent information. There's an inspection advisory which advises the buyer to inspect the property. Here's a sample addendum form that could be used to add other terms in. Here's a counteroffer form. This counteroffer is a single counteroffer, so if both buyer and seller execute it one time, it's a binding contract. And this is a multiple counteroffer, so seller would have to execute this contract twice and buyer once to create a binding contract. This is the simple request for repairs form. This is where you can ask for the seller to do repairs to the property. And here at the bottom, you can talk about termite work and credits as well. Thanks for listening. Contact us if you have any questions.